Imagine standing in modern Trier in Western Germany. Cars pass along quiet streets. Students walk toward cafes and university buildings. Tourists gather around a massive Roman gate known as the Porta Nigra, taking photos of dark stone blocks that have survived nearly 2,000 years. But now remove the modern roads. Remove the cars, the glass storefronts, the electricity. The air smells of smoke from hearth fires. The ground beneath your feet is uneven stone. Carts creak past you carrying grain, pottery, and barrels of wine from the nearby Moselle Valley. Above the roofs rises a skyline that feels strangely ancient. Huge Roman walls still surround the city. Massive imperial buildings stand in partial ruin. And towering above everything is an enormous brick basilica, the Aula Palatina, once used by Roman emperors themselves. This is Trier around the early Middle Ages, a city where people are living among the remains of one of the Roman Empire's most important capitals. To understand why Trier looks this way, we need to go back several centuries. During the height of the Roman Empire, Trier was not a minor provincial town. It was one of the most important cities in the Western Empire. Founded by the Romans around the late 1st century BCE as Augusta Treverorum, the city grew rapidly because of its location along the Moselle River. The river connected the region to the Rhine frontier and to trade routes stretching across Gaul and Germania. By the 3rd and 4th centuries, Trier had become something even more significant. It became an imperial residence. Several Roman emperors ruled from here, including the famous Constantine the Great, before he later moved east to found Constantinople. At that time, Trier was enormous by ancient standards. Estimates suggest the city may have held 60,000 to 80,000 people, making it one of the largest cities north of the Alps. The city included imperial palaces, massive bath complexes, a circus for chariot racing, large administrative buildings, temples and churches, defensive walls, nearly 6 kilometers long. If you stood in Trier in the 4th century, you would not feel like you were in the distant frontier of an empire. You would feel like you were standing in a major imperial capital. The Roman government invested heavily in Trier. You can still see evidence of this today. The most famous surviving monument is the Porta Nigra. This enormous gate was built around the late 2nd century. It consists of thousands of massive sandstone blocks stacked together without mortar. The gate once formed part of Trier's defensive wall system. Soldiers and guards controlled who entered the city through its heavy towers and archways. But this was only one piece of Trier's massive Roman infrastructure. Nearby stood the imperial baths, an enormous complex that was meant to rival the great bathhouses of Rome itself. The baths included heated rooms, swimming pools, changing halls, exercise areas, underground heating systems. Even today, the ruins of the imperial baths of Trier reveal the enormous scale of Roman architecture. And then, there was the Aula Palatina. This gigantic basilica hall served as the emperor's throne room when Trier functioned as an imperial residence. The building is almost 70 meters long and rises more than 30 meters high. Inside, the emperor would sit on a raised throne at the far end of the hall while officials, ambassadors, and petitioners approached across the vast interior. For people living in Roman Trier, the city projected power. It was designed to remind everyone that the Roman state was immense, organized, and permanent. But history had other plans. By the late 4th and 5th centuries, the stability of the Roman world began to weaken. The western half of the Roman Empire faced increasing pressures. Germanic groups crossed the Rhine frontier. Political instability spread through imperial leadership. Economic systems began to fracture. Trier felt these pressures directly. Because of its position near the Rhine frontier, the city experienced repeated attacks during the late Roman period. Several times during the 4th and 5th centuries, Trier was captured and sacked by invading forces. Each attack damaged infrastructure and weakened the local economy. Then, in the 5th century, the Western Roman Empire finally collapsed. In 476 AD, the last Western emperor was removed from power. For Trier, this meant something dramatic. The city lost its role as an imperial administrative center. Without the empire's funding, The enormous buildings that once symbolized Roman power became difficult to maintain. Gradually, Trier began to shrink. By the early Middle Ages, around 600 to 900 AD, Trier still existed as an important regional center, but it looked very different from its Roman past. The population was much smaller. Instead of tens of thousands of residents, the city may have held only a few thousand people. Large sections of the old Roman city were abandoned. Fields and gardens appeared where Roman neighborhoods once stood. Many of the grand imperial buildings fell into ruin. But unlike some Roman cities that were completely abandoned, Trier continued to function. People adapted the Roman structures around them. The huge Aula Palatina, for example, was eventually converted into a Christian religious building. Other Roman structures were reused as defensive fortifications, housing foundations, workshops, storage spaces. The Roman walls still protected the city. Even if the empire was gone, its stone remained. For medieval residents, Roman architecture would have felt both practical and mysterious. Many people living in the city likely had little understanding of who built these structures or why they were so large. To them, the ruins may have seemed like the work of an earlier, almost mythical civilization. While imperial authority declined, another institution began to shape Trier's future: the Christian Church. Trier became one of the earliest centers of Christianity in Northern Europe. By the 4th century, the city already had an established bishopric. One of its most famous bishops was Saint Ambrose of Milan's contemporary, Saint Maximin of Trier. The church played a crucial role in maintaining Trier's importance after the Roman state collapsed. Cathedrals and religious institutions helped organize local society. Pilgrims visited the city to see relics and churches. Clergy preserved literacy and administrative knowledge during a time when many Roman institutions disappeared. The Great Trier Cathedral, whose origins go back to the Roman period, became one of the oldest continuously used churches in Germany. Religion helped keep the city alive. While political power shifted between different kingdoms, the church created a form of continuity between the Roman world and medieval Europe. After the fall of Roman rule, Trier eventually came under the control of the Franks. The Frankish kingdoms gradually expanded across former Roman territories in Gaul and Western Germany. Under rulers like Clovis I and later the Carolingian dynasty, Trier remained an important religious and regional center. During the reign of Charlemagne in the late 8th and early 9th centuries, the city became part of a new political order. Charlemagne's empire attempted to revive aspects of Roman governance, education, and Christianity across Western Europe. Trier's Roman heritage made it symbolically valuable in this project. Even though the population was far smaller than in Roman times, the city still carried prestige because of its imperial past. So, what would daily life actually feel like in Trier around the early medieval period? The streets would have been narrower and quieter than in Roman times. Many Roman roads were still in use, but maintenance was limited. Buildings were often made of timber rather than stone. Markets likely took place near central squares and church areas. Merchants sold goods such as grain, wine from nearby vineyards, pottery, leather goods, iron tools. Craft workers operated small workshops producing everyday items for local use. The Moselle River remained essential. Boats carried trade goods along the river toward the Rhine and deeper into continental Europe. Religion structured much of daily life. Church bells marked the hours. Festivals and holy days shaped the rhythm of the year. Pilgrims occasionally arrived, adding movement and diversity to the city's population. Compared with its Roman past, Trier was quieter, but it was far from dead. If you walk through Trier today, you can still see the strange overlap between these historical layers. The Porta Nigra still stands. Roman bath ruins still dominate parts of the city. The Aula Palatina still towers over its surroundings. But modern Trier is a university city with modern infrastructure and a population of around 100,000 people. The medieval city eventually grew again. Trade expanded during the later Middle Ages. New churches, houses, and institutions replaced many of the Roman ruins. Yet, the ancient structures never fully disappeared. Instead, Trier became a city where 2,000 years of urban history remain visible at once. You can walk down a modern street and suddenly find yourself standing next to a wall built during the Roman Empire. Few cities in Northern Europe preserve this level of continuity. Trier's story shows how cities rarely vanish completely. Even when empires fall, the physical foundations of cities remain. Streets continue to guide movement. Rivers continue to support trade. Walls continue to protect settlements. And buildings, even ruined ones, influence how future generations construct their cities. Trier was once an imperial capital. Then it became a smaller medieval town living among ancient monuments. Over centuries, it slowly transformed again into a modern European city. But the stones of the Roman world are still there, standing quietly in the background, reminding us that long before modern Germany existed, Trier was already one of the great cities of the ancient world.